I took my son's broken laptop to get fixed, but when the technician finished the job, he took me to a corner of the shop and whispered urgently, "Ma'am, I should not get involved in this. But you have to see what I found here." When he showed me the screen, I felt my legs go weak. What I saw on that computer would change my life forever. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and write in the comments. Where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories reach. My name is Barbara. I am 58 years old and I always considered myself a present mother. I live in a Midwestern city with my husband Robert, who is 60, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew my only son David perfectly. He is 32. He is an engineer and works at a multinational company. He was always an exemplary son, or at least that was what I thought. It all started on a common Tuesday in October. David showed up at home in the middle of the afternoon, which was already strange because he usually worked late. He brought his old laptop, the one he used since college, all scratched and with faded stickers. "Mom, can you do me a favor?" he asked, looking hurried. "This laptop fell and the screen broke. I need it to work because it has some important files, but I do not have time to take it to get fixed. Do you know a reliable technician?" The situation seemed a bit strange to me. David was always extremely careful with his electronics, almost obsessive. Seeing him with a broken laptop was unusual, but I did not question much. After all, accidents happen. "Yes, I know one," I replied. "That boy who fixed my cell phone last month, Jason. He has a small shop near the downtown square. They say he's very good and honest." David seemed to hesitate for a moment. "Are you sure he is reliable? There are confidential work documents here. You understand?" "Of course, son. Jason is super professional. He even signs a confidentiality agreement with clients." "Relax." He still seemed reluctant, but he ended up accepting. He handed me the laptop along with a paper where he had written the access password. "It is okay, Mom, but when he finishes, can you go pick it up personally? I do not want it to stay there too long. Do not worry. I will take it tomorrow myself and I will keep an eye on the delivery time." David gave me a quick hug and left in a hurry. I remember thinking that all that was kind of weird, but I did not give it much importance. My son was always a workaholic. He lived worried about deadlines and projects. The next morning, I went to Jason's shop. It was a small and organized place, with shelves full of computer parts and cell phones under repair. Jason welcomed me with a friendly smile. He was about 28 years old. He wore glasses and had that calm attitude of someone who really knows what he is doing. "Mrs. Barbara, good to see you again. How can I help you?" I explained David's laptop situation. Jason examined the device carefully, noting the model and the problem. "The screen is indeed very damaged," he observed. "But from what I see, the rest is intact. I am going to need to order a new screen, but I can solve it in about 3 business days." "Perfect. How much will it cost me?" He gave me a reasonable quote and I authorized the service. I gave him the paper with the password David had given me, explaining that he would need to test the equipment after the repair. "No problem, Mrs. Barbara. I will call you as soon as it is ready." I returned home and let David know by message that the laptop was with the technician. He replied quickly, "Okay, Mom, thanks. Let me know when it's ready." The following days were normal. Robert and I took the opportunity to make some repairs around the house. Simple things we had been postponing. David called every now and then to know if the laptop was ready, always with that tone of urgency in his voice. On Friday afternoon, my cell phone rang. It was Jason. "Mrs. Barbara, the laptop is ready. Can you come pick it up?" "That is great. I will stop by in an hour." I grabbed my purse and drove to the shop. When I arrived, Jason was alone. He greeted me, but I noticed something different in his expression. Did he look worried? Uncomfortable. The repair turned out perfect. He said, showing me the laptop with the new screen. "I tested everything. It is working perfectly. Wonderful." How much was it then? It was at that moment that everything changed. Jason looked quickly towards the shop door, as if checking if there was anyone else nearby. Then he came closer and spoke in a low voice, almost whispering, "Mrs. Barbara, I should not get involved in this. Normally, I do not look at clients' files, I swear. But when I went to test the laptop after the repair, some folders were open on the desktop and I saw some things." My heart started to race. "What things, Jason?" He took a deep breath, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, you need to see this. I do not know if I should get involved, but if it were my mother, I would want someone to warn her." "Warn me about what? What are you talking about?" Jason turned the laptop towards me. The screen showed an open folder named Project Atlas, Confidential. Inside it, there were various files. He clicked on one of them. What I saw left me completely frozen. It was a detailed spreadsheet with name, dates, values, and plans, meticulous plans, involving my husband, Robert, and me, amounts of our pensions, estimates of our life insurance, calculations on the sale of our house, timelines with specific dates. This cannot be true, I murmured, feeling my legs shake. It must be some work from his company, some project. Jason shook his head and opened another file. It was a text document, a kind of diary or personal notes. I started reading, and the words seemed to jump off the screen. August 15th, talked to Victoria today. She confirmed that the plan is viable. Her parents lasted 6 months after they started with the small doses. No one suspected anything. The doctor attributed everything to age and health history. My vision blurred. I continued reading, each line being a stab in my heart. August 22nd, I need to be more careful. My mom is too observant. I am going to start slowly, like Victoria suggested. First Dad, who is less attentive. Mom only later, when we are already closer to the goal. September 3rd, first dose administered in Dad's breakfast. He did not notice anything. Victoria said the symptoms only appear after a few weeks. They seem like natural things of age, tiredness, forgetting things, dizziness. I had to lean on the counter. Jason held me by the arm, worried. "Are you okay, ma'am? Do you want to sit down? Do you want water?" I could not answer. I continued reading, hypnotized by the horror of those words. My own son, coldly documenting a plan to poison us, to kill us. "Ma'am," said Jason softly, "there is more, much more. There are exported text messages, emails, photos of documents. He was planning everything with the smallest detail." He opened another folder. There were the screenshots of conversations between David and someone named Victoria. The messages were technical, cold, calculating. They discussed doses, symptoms, how to make it look natural, how to avoid suspicion. I felt nausea rising up my throat. I ran to the shop bathroom and threw up. When I returned, pale and shaking, Jason had prepared a glass of water for me. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Barbara. I am truly sorry that you have to see this, but you needed to know." I sat in a chair, trying to process what I had just discovered. My son David, my only son, the one I carried for 9 months, the one I nursed, the one I raised with all love and dedication, was planning to murder his father and me for money. "Are you sure this is real?" I asked, still looking for some rational explanation. It could be a work of fiction, some creative project. Jason shook his head. "Mrs. Barbara." I checked the dates. "Some of these notes are from weeks ago, and there are receipts here, invoices for online purchases of chemical substances. He even has notes on the times you and your husband eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is not fiction." Reality fell on me like a bucket of cold water. It was real. All that was terribly real. I stayed sitting in that chair for several minutes, trying to make my brain process what my eyes had seen. Jason respected my silence, but I could feel his concern. He walked from one side to the other of the small shop, clearly not knowing what to do. "Jason," I managed to say finally, "can you copy all this for me? All these folders, all these files?" He nodded immediately. "Of course, Mrs. Barbara. In fact, I had already separated everything into a specific folder, just in case you wanted it. I can move it to a USB drive." While he worked copying the files, my mind ran in 1,000 different directions. How was this possible? How could my David, who was always so affectionate, so attentive, be planning something so monstrous? I remembered all the times in the last few weeks that he had shown up at home without warning. "I just stopped by to say hi," he would say, always offering help in the kitchen, always wanting to prepare coffee for his dad, always being too helpful. My God, all that had been part of the plan. "Ready," said Jason, handing me the USB drive. "It is all here. Mrs. Barbara, you need to go to the police, to the authorities. This is very serious." I took the USB with shaking hands and put it in my purse. "Yes, I know, but first I need to talk to my husband. He has to know." "Are you sure you want to go back home? What if your son shows up there?" The question froze my blood. David had a key to the house. He could show up at any moment, and if he suspected that we had discovered something, the laptop? I said suddenly. David is going to want the laptop back if I do not take it. He is going to get suspicious. Jason thought for a moment. I have an idea. I am going to restore the laptop exactly as it was before I opened those folders. I am going to delete even the browsing history and the access logs, so he will not know that anyone saw anything. Can you do that? Yes, I can. Give me 15 minutes. While Jason worked, I sat again and tried to organize my thoughts. I needed to be smart. If David discovered that we knew something, he could accelerate his plans or try something immediate. I took out my cell phone and sent a message to Robert. Honey, I need to talk to you urgently when you get home. It is very important. Do not talk to anyone about this. Not even to David if he calls you. Robert replied almost immediately. Is everything okay? You are worrying me. I am fine, but it is serious. I will tell you when I arrive. 15 minutes later, Jason handed me the laptop. Ready. It is exactly as I found it when I turned it on for the first time. He will not suspect anything. I paid for the repair and thanked him deeply. Jason, thank you. Thank you. Really, you saved our lives. He put his hand on my shoulder. Are you going to be okay, Mrs. Barbara? Do you want me to call someone? No, I will be okay. I need to leave now. The drive back home was blurry. I drove on automatic, still in a state of shock. Every traffic light seemed to take an eternity. When I finally parked in the driveway, I saw that Robert's car was already there. He had arrived earlier from work. I entered through the kitchen door and found my husband sitting at the table, visibly worried. Barb, what happened? Your message left me very restless. I put David's laptop on the table and sat next to Robert. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. How do you tell your husband that your son is planning to kill you, Robert? I need you to stay calm and listen to me until the end. Okay. His expression became even more worried. You are scaring me. I know. Forgive me. But you need to see something. I took out my personal laptop, inserted the USB drive Jason had given me, and opened the files. One by one, I showed everything to Robert, the spreadsheets, the notes, the conversations, the receipts. I saw my husband's face go through all possible emotions, initial confusion, disbelief, horror, deep pain, and finally, a contained rage that I rarely saw in him. This cannot be true, he whispered with a broken voice. Our son, our David. I did not want to believe it either, I replied, taking his hands. But it is real, Robert. All this is real. He stood up abruptly, knocking over the chair. Was he poisoning us? He was, my God. The dizziness I have felt in the last few weeks. It was like a bomb exploded in my head. Robert had complained of dizziness, unexplainable tiredness, even a fall we had last week, which we attributed to age. We have to go to the hospital, I said, getting up too. Now, we need to do blood tests. Check if there is any substance in your system. And you, Barb, do you feel bad too? I stopped to think. No, not me. But according to David's notes, the plan was to start with Robert first. I would come later. I am going to do the tests too, just in case. But Robert, before we go to the hospital, we need to decide what to do. If David finds out we discovered, let us go straight to the police station, said Robert firmly. Right now, I am not going to wait one more minute. But what if they do not believe us? What if they think we are exaggerating, that it is just a misunderstanding? Robert pointed to the laptop screen. Misunderstanding Barb. It is all documented here. He detailed everything. Like an idiot. He thought he would never be discovered. He was right. But something still bothered me. Robert, who is this Victoria that appears in the messages she talks, as if she had already done this before? We went back to the files and started looking for more information about her. We found photos, conversations, even an address. Victoria Fernandez, 29 years old. David's girlfriend for 8 months. 8 months, I murmured. He has been with her for 8 months and never introduced her to us. In the conversations, it was clear that Victoria was the mind behind everything. She suggested the methods. She calmed David when he showed doubts. She planned every detail. In a particularly shocking message, she wrote, "Babe, I know it is hard at first. It was hard for me too when I did it with my parents. But later, you will see it was the best decision. Think about our life after. With all that money, we will be able to travel the world, buy that house you dream of. It is worth it. She killed her own parents," said Robert, with evident horror in his voice, "and she is teaching our son to do the same." We searched for more information about Victoria Fernandez online. We found old news from a newspaper in Florida about the mysterious death of a couple, Hector and Sylvia Fernandez, 3 years ago. The police had investigated, but closed the case for lack of evidence. The couple's only daughter, Victoria, inherited everything: a high-end house, investments, a condo on the beach. She has done this before, I said, feeling a chill run down my back, and she got away with it. Now she is using our son to do it again. Robert was visibly affected. He walked to the window and stood looking out, with his hands shaking. How did our son get involved with a person like that? How did we not realize that was the question that tormented me the most? Where had we gone wrong as parents? What signs did we let pass? We do not have time for this now, I said, trying to stay focused. We need to act. I am going to call the police. But before I could pick up the phone, we heard the unmistakable sound of a key in the lock of the front door. David was arriving. Robert and I exchanged terrified looks. In a quick movement, I closed all the files on the laptop and pulled out the USB, throwing it inside my purse. Robert straightened the chair he had knocked over. Act normal, I whispered to him. You cannot suspect anything. David entered the living room with a smile on his face. He was wearing that blue dress shirt I had ironed for him myself last week. He seemed so normal, so common. How could someone with that appearance hide such monstrosity? Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I came to get my laptop. Could they fix it? My voice almost failed, but I forced myself to smile. Yes, son. It turned out perfect. Jason did a great job. David grabbed the laptop and opened it, checking the new screen. That is great. How much was it? I will pay you back. It is not necessary, son. It was cheap. He insisted, but I refused. Meanwhile, I observed his every movement, every expression. I looked for signs of nervousness, of guilt, of anything that gave away what I now knew, but I found nothing. He was completely calm. Are you guys going to have dinner? Asked David, putting the laptop in his backpack. I was thinking of ordering a pizza, having a family dinner. It has been a while since we did that. I felt my stomach turn. A family dinner. Another opportunity for him to put poison in our food. Not today, son, replied Robert, with a voice more controlled than I expected. Your mother and I are going out to have dinner. It has been a while since we had a moment just for us. You know how it is. I saw a slight contraction on David's face. Frustration, anger. It happened so fast I almost thought I imagined it. Oh, what a shame. But it is okay. I understand. Enjoy yourselves, you two, then. He came closer and gave me a kiss on the forehead. I needed all my willpower not to pull away. That same affectionate gesture that always melted my heart now caused me repulsion. Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad. Call me for anything. We waited in silence until hearing his car leaving the driveway and driving away down the street. Only then did Robert collapse in the chair, putting his face between his hands. I cannot believe it, seeing him here, acting normal, as if he were not planning to kill us. Barb, I want to throw up. I hugged my husband, feeling his back shake. I know, honey, I know. But now we need to act fast. He can come back at any moment. I grabbed my cell phone and called the authorities. I briefly explained the situation and they directed me to go to the nearest precinct to file a report. On the way, we stopped first at a hospital. We explained the situation to an emergency doctor, who immediately took blood samples from Robert and me too, just in case. The toxicology tests would take a few days, but the doctor instructed us to avoid any food or drink that David could have access to. You need to go to a safe place, alerted the doctor. If what you are saying is true, and there is evidence of that, you are in real danger. From there, we went to the prosecutor's office, where Prosecutor Marcus Saints received us, a man of about 45 years with a serious expression. We told the whole story from the beginning. We showed the files Jason had copied, the conversations, the spreadsheets, everything. The prosecutor examined everything with attention, taking notes. This is extremely serious. I am going to need to secure this USB drive as evidence and start an immediate investigation. And what about this Victoria, I asked? She apparently already killed her own parents. Is there a way to investigate that too? The prosecutor made more notes. I am going to get in touch with the Florida authorities and request information about that case. If we manage to prove a connection, we can reopen the investigation. We spent the next 3 hours at the station, giving detailed statements, signing documents, answering questions. The prosecutor was thorough, wanting to know every detail since when we started noticing changes in David's behavior. You cannot go back home tonight, said the prosecutor finally. I am going to request police protection, but for now, I suggest you stay at a hotel. Use cash, not a card, to not leave traces, and do not tell anyone where you are. Not even relatives. We left the station and it was almost midnight. We went to a simple hotel downtown, far from our neighborhood. We checked in using different names, like the prosecutor had suggested, in the hotel room. Robert and I sat on the bed, exhausted physically and emotionally. Neither of us could completely process the reality of the situation. "How are we going to sleep?" asked Robert. "How am I going to close my eyes knowing that our son wants to kill us?" had no answer. I lay down beside him and we stayed in silence, each one lost in our own tormented thoughts. My mind would not stop reliving moments from David's childhood, his first day of school, his graduation, the day he got his first job, when he was 10 years old and broke his arm riding a bicycle. I remember how he cried in my lap at the hospital. I swore to myself that I would always protect him from any harm. Now it was from him that we needed protection. My cell phone vibrated. It was a message from David. "Mom, where are you guys? I stopped by the house and there is no one. I am worried." I showed the message to Robert. What do I answer him? Tell him we went to a romantic hotel, early wedding anniversary or something like that. I wrote the message with shaking hands. "Son, everything is fine. We decided to give each other a surprise and we are at a hotel. We will be back tomorrow. Love you." The answer arrived in seconds. "Oh, that is cool. Enjoy yourselves, you two. Love you guys. Love you guys." The words that before warmed my heart now seemed empty and cruel. How could he write that while planning our deaths? Finally, at dawn, I managed to sleep out of pure exhaustion. My sleep was agitated, full of nightmares where David appeared with different faces, sometimes as the loving boy I knew, others as a stranger with cold eyes. I woke up early with my cell phone ringing. It was Prosecutor Saints. "Mrs. Barbara, I need you and your husband to come to the station now. We have important news." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in the prosecutor's office. He had a gloomy expression. "We got preliminary results from Mr. Roberts' toxicology tests." He started. Traces of toxic substances were found in his blood, specifically small amounts of arsenic and another chemical compound that usually causes neurological symptoms. Robert turned pale. "So it is true. He was really poisoning me." "Yes. And there is more?" We got in touch with Florida. The case of Victoria Fernandez's parents' death is being reopened. At the time, there were suspicions of poisoning, but the bodies had been cremated before more detailed tests could be done. Now, with the evidence you brought, we have grounds for a new investigation. And David, I asked, what is going to happen to him? The prosecutor took a deep breath. "We are going to need to arrest him, Mrs. Barbara. We have enough proof of attempted homicide. The question is, do you want to be present when we make the arrest?" The prosecutor's question echoed in my head. Did I want to be present when they arrested my son? Part of me wanted to confront him, look him in the eyes and ask why. Another part of me wanted to be as far away as possible, wanted to wake up and discover that everything was nothing more than a horrible nightmare. "I want to be there," said Robert, surprising me. His voice was firm, determined. "I need to look him in the eyes and know why." The prosecutor nodded. "I understand. We plan to make the arrest this afternoon. We are going to summon him to the station under the pretext of clarifying some points about an alleged robbery in the neighborhood. He will not suspect. We spent the morning in a state of unbearable tension. We had breakfast at a nearby coffee shop, but the food seemed to have no taste. Robert barely touched his toast. I forced a few bites. More out of necessity than desire. "Barb," said Robert suddenly, "do you think we made a mistake somewhere as parents? Where did we fail?" It was the question that tormented me since I discovered everything. I do not know Robert. I reviewed our entire life in my head. We gave him love, education, limits when necessary. He never went hungry. He was never mistreated. I cannot understand. "Maybe it is Victoria," suggested Robert. "Maybe she manipulated him, transformed him into something he is not." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe my son was a victim, that he had been seduced by a sociopath. But his notes were too detailed, too calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. At 2 in the afternoon, we returned to the station. Prosecutor Saints took us to an observation room with a two-way mirror. From there, we could see the interrogation room without being seen. "David should arrive in a few minutes," explained the prosecutor. We are going to start with routine questions about the alleged robbery. When he is comfortable, we will show him the evidence. My heart was racing. My hands were sweating. Robert held my hand so tight it hurt, but I did not complain. We needed each other in that moment. At 2:15, the door to the interrogation room opened. David entered, wearing jeans and a casual t-shirt. He seemed relaxed, even curious. Good afternoon. He greeted the people who were in the room. I received a call saying you wanted to talk to me about a robbery. Yes, Mr. David. Please, sit down. This will not take long. David sat down, crossing his legs casually. He was so calm, so confident. He had no idea what was coming. The officers started with banal questions about where David was on a certain night, if he knew certain people from the neighborhood. David answered with patience, finding everything kind of strange, but he did not suspect. Then, the officer changed tactics. Mr. David, do you know a person named Victoria Fernandez? I saw David's body tense up for a fraction of a second before composing himself. Yes, I know her. She's my girlfriend. Why? How long have you been together? About 8 months. But what does that have to do with a robbery? The officer ignored the question. You have a laptop, correct? An old laptop that recently went for repair. David's expression changed. First confusion, then the beginning of worry. Yes, I do. My mom took it to get fixed, but I do not understand. The technician who fixed your laptop found some interesting files, Mr. David. Files that suggest you are planning to murder your own parent. The silence that followed was deafening. David stayed completely motionless, the color fleeing from his face. For long seconds, he said nothing. He just looked at the officer with eyes wide open. That is ridiculous, he managed to say finally, but his voice was weak. There must be some mistake. The officer put a folder on the table and started taking sheets out of it, printouts of the files Jason had copied, the spreadsheets, the conversations, the detailed notes. This is your laptop, is it not? This is your access password. These are your files. David looked at the papers and I saw the exact moment he realized he was finished. His face went from pale to gray. His hands started to shake. I can explain. Please, explain then. Explain the spreadsheets detailing the value of your parents' life insurance. Explain the notes on poison doses. Explain the conversations with your girlfriend about how to make it look like a natural death. David closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there were tears in them. You guys do not understand. Victoria. She convinced me. She said it was the only way to have a better life. She had already done it before. She said it was easy, that no one would discover. So you admit you were planning to murder your parents. A long silence. So, almost in a whisper, yes. I felt my legs go weak. Hearing that confirmation, even already knowing the truth, was like receiving a punch in the stomach. Robert beside me let out a choked sob. And you had already started to execute that plan. Had you already administered toxic substances to your father? David lowered his head. Yes. Small doses at breakfast. Victoria said it would take a few months, that it would seem natural. Your father could have died, Mr. David. He could have suffered permanent damage. Do you have any notion of the gravity of what you did? David's tears now ran freely down his face. I know, and God, what did I do? What did I become? The officer made a signal, and 2 police officers entered the room. David Mendez. You are under arrest for attempted qualified homicide. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you, while they read his rights. David looked around the room, as if looking for an exit. His eyes passed over the mirror, and for an irrational moment I thought he could see me. My mom, he said suddenly, interrupting the officer. My dad, do they know? They know everything? In fact, they are here. David turned pale. No, please. No, I need to talk to them. I need to explain. I think you already explained enough, Mr. David, when they put the handcuffs on him. Something inside me broke. Seeing my son like that, handcuffed like a common criminal, was a pain I did not know existed. Robert held me while I broke down crying. Prosecutor Saints entered the observation room. Do you want to talk to him? I looked at Robert. He shook his head. Not yet. I cannot. Not yet. I understand. He will be transferred to prison today. Victoria Fernandez will also be arrested. We found enough evidence to accuse her not only of complicity in this case, but also of homicide in the case of her parents. The following days passed in a surreal haze. Robert and I returned home, but the house did not seem the same. Every room held memories that were now stained by betrayal. The kitchen where David poisoned us, The living room where he sat and talked with us, faking concern. His room, through whose door I could not even pass. The complete results of Robert's tests arrived. Besides arsenic, there were traces of 2 other toxic compounds. The doctor explained that if he had continued being poisoned for more weeks, Robert would probably have suffered permanent damage to his liver and kidneys, possibly even organ failure. He was lucky, said the doctor. Very, very lucky. Lucky. What a strange word to describe discovering your son wants to kill you. The news leaked to the press. Somehow, some journalist discovered the story, and soon we were on all the news channels. Son planned to murder parents for inheritance. Engineer arrested for attempted homicide of his own parents. Girlfriend convinced him to kill family. Our house was besieged by reporters. We had to hire private security just to be able to leave. Neighbors who before greeted us now looked at us with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. We decided we would not give interviews. Our pain was ours, not public entertainment. 1 week after the arrest, we received a letter from David. The prison had sent it. After verifying it did not contain anything inappropriate, Robert wanted to throw it in the trash without reading, but I needed to know what he had to say. The letter was short, written with familiar handwriting. Mom and Dad, I know I do not deserve forgiveness. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I need you to know that I regret it deeply. It was not you who failed as parents. It was me who failed as a son. Victoria, she manipulated me. She made me believe that you were obstacles to our happiness. But that is no excuse. I knew what I was doing. I chose to do it. I am going to pass the rest of my life trying to understand how I reached this point, how I became someone capable of planning the death of the 2 people who loved me most in the world. If I could go back, if I could undo everything, but I cannot. I just wanted you to know that, despite everything, despite all my monstrosity. Part of me still loves you, and part of me died when I realized what I had become. David. I folded the letter slowly. There were no tears. I had cried so much in the last few days that I seemed to have no more tears to shed. What are you going to do with that? Asked Robert. Keep it, I think. I do not know. Maybe one day I will manage to read it without feeling this. I pointed to my chest, where a constant pain had installed itself. Our lawyer, Miss Claudia, came to visit us. She brought news about the case. Victoria is trying to throw all the blame on David. She says he was the brain of everything, that she just agreed with what he said out of fear. But we have the conversations, the evidence. No one is believing her. And her parents' case, I asked, it is being reopened. Based on the new evidence and the pattern of behavior, there is a good possibility she will be formally accused of their murder too. How much time are they going to give them? Robert wanted to know. Ms. Claudia sighed. David is being accused of attempted qualified homicide with aggravating circumstances. The victims being his own parents. Premeditation. Use of poison. He can receive 15 to 30 years. Victoria, if she is convicted of her parents' murder too, can receive the maximum penalty, practically life imprisonment, 30 years. David would be almost 65 when he got out, his whole life wasted. The trial was scheduled for 3 months later. Until then, we would have to live with the press, with the looks, with the pain. We started going to therapy, first individually, then as a couple. The therapist, Dr. Sarah, was patient with us. She did not try to force acceptance or forgiveness. She just helped us process, one day at a time. You went through a deep trauma, she explained in a session, not only because of the betrayal, but because of the complete rupture of trust in the person who should be most trustworthy. That takes time to heal. Maybe it never heals completely. I cannot even look at photos of him. I confessed. I put everything away, all the albums, all the photos in the living room. I cannot stand seeing his face. That is normal. Now he represents pain with time. Maybe you will manage to separate the David you knew from the one who planned to kill you, or maybe not. And that is okay too. Robert had his own issues. He blamed himself for not noticing the poisoning symptoms, for having trusted too much. How did I not realize he repeated constantly? The dizziness, the tiredness, the forgetting. I thought it was just age, stress. How was I so blind you trusted your son? Replied Dr. Sarah. That is not blindness, it is love, and he used that love against you. The fault is not yours. 2 weeks after the arrest, Victoria's mother looked for us. Mrs. Lords was a fragile woman of about 60 years who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. I needed to talk to you," she said when we received her at home. "I needed to say that I am so sorry, truly sorry. I was bewildered. You are not to blame for what your daughter did, but I should have seen the signs," she said with tears in her eyes, "when Hector and Sylvia died. When my daughter inherited everything so quickly, I suspected, but I did not want to believe. I did not want to accept that my own daughter could be capable of that. She told us Victoria was always different. Even as a child, she showed no empathy, manipulated people, lied compulsively. Mrs. Lords thought it was just a phase that would change with maturity, but it got worse," confessed Mrs. Lords. "And when Hector and Sylvia died, I knew, deep down, I knew, but I did not have the courage to do anything. And now she destroyed more lives. I completed." Mrs. Lords nodded, crying openly. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry for not having had the courage to report her before. Maybe if I had done it, you would not be going through this." We did not know what to say to her. Part of me wanted to blame her, wanted to scream that yes, she should have done something, but looking at that fragile and shattered woman, I only managed to feel pity. "What are you going to do now?" asked Robert. "I am going to testify against her," said Mrs. Lords with determination. "I am going to tell everything I know, everything I always suspected. It is the only thing I can do to try to make amends." The trial began on a cold January morning. Robert and I arrived at the court, escorted by security, to avoid the crowd of reporters and curious people gathering at the entrance. The courtroom was full. I recognized some neighbors, colleagues from David's work, even people I had never seen before, but who apparently had morbid interest in the case. When they brought David, handcuffed and wearing the orange prison uniform, I felt my heart tighten. He had lost a lot of weight. His face was pale, marked. When his eyes met mine, I saw genuine pain in them, but I looked away. I was not ready to face him directly yet. Victoria was brought in separately. Unlike David, she seemed composed, almost serene. Her hair was done, her posture erect. It was as if she were going to a business meeting, not her own trial. Prosecutor Edward Martinez opened the case with a forceful speech. "This is not just a case of attempted homicide," he began. "It is a case of betrayal in its most basic and painful form. A son who methodically planned to murder his own parents. A woman who had already killed before and who seduced a young man to do the same. We are going to prove, beyond any reasonable doubt, that David Mendez and Victoria Fernandez are guilty of the crimes for which they are accused." David's defense. Mr. Gomez attempted a strategy of psychological manipulation. David Mendez is a victim, he argued. Victim of a manipulative woman who seduced him and convinced him to do things he would never have done alone. My client was a good man, a respected engineer, until meeting Victoria Fernandez. On the other hand, Victoria's defense went in the opposite direction, blaming David for everything and claiming she was an innocent girlfriend who was being falsely incriminated. The following days were torture. We had to listen to witnesses, experts, detailed accounts of how David had planned our deaths. The toxicology expert explained in technical terms how the arsenic and the other compounds David used acted in the body, causing progressive damage to organs if it continued being administered, explained the expert. Mr. Robert Mendez would have approximately 2 months of life. The death would seem natural, multiple organ failure, common in elderly people. Jason, the computer technician, was called to testify. He explained how he found the files, how he initially hesitated to tell us, but his conscience did not allow him to stay silent. "I saw the spreadsheets, the notes, the conversations," said Jason. "There was no doubt about what was being planned. I would have felt responsible if I had not warned Mrs. Barbara. When my turn to testify came, I went up to the stand with shaking legs. The prosecutor guided me gently through the account. From the day David asked me to take the laptop to repair until the moment I saw the files. How did you feel discovering your son was planning to kill you?" asked the prosecutor. I looked directly at David while answering. I felt as if they had ripped my heart out of my chest, as if the son I knew had died and been replaced by a stranger. I saw tears running down David's face, but I continued. "I carried this boy in my womb. I spent sleepless nights when he was sick. I celebrated every achievement of his, and he planned coldly to poison me, to kill me, just for money." The prosecutor then showed me some of the printouts of the files. "Do you recognize recognize this, yes. They are the spreadsheets David made calculating the value of our life insurance, of the house, of our savings. And this, the conversations between him and Victoria, discussing poison doses, symptoms, how to make it look like natural death. It was too painful. I had to make several pauses to compose myself. The judge was understanding, allowing me to drink water, breathe deep. David's lawyer tried to make me seem like a vengeful mother, but it did not work. The facts were the facts. The evidence was there. Robert testified the next day. He was more contained than me, more focused on the fact. But when the prosecutor asked how he felt about his son trying to poison him, Robert finally let the emotion show. "I taught this boy to ride a bike," he said with a broken voice. "I played soccer with him every weekend. I helped him with homework. I gave him advice on his career, on life. And now I discover he was putting poison in my coffee every morning. How should I feel?" The most shocking moment of the trial came when Mrs. Lourdes, Victoria's mother, testified. She told about the suspicions she always had about her daughter, about the strange behaviors since childhood, about the mysterious death of Hector and Sylvia. "I always knew," she confessed, crying. "Deep down, I always knew my daughter had killed that couple, but I did not have the courage to accept, to do something, and because of my cowardice. More people almost died." Victoria's defense tried to discredit Mrs. Lourdes, saying she was a resentful mother trying to harm her daughter, but the damage was done. On the 5th day of the trial, they played the recordings of the conversations between David and Victoria. Hearing that out loud, in the full courtroom, was surreal. "Victoria, babe, you cannot falter now. Think about what we are going to have when this is over." "David, I know, but it is hard. Every time I see my dad, I think I am poisoning him." "Victoria, so what? He is old. He was going to die in a few years anyway. You are just accelerating the inevitable and doing it in a way he will not suffer." "David, and my mom, Victoria, after your dad, she is going to be easy. She will be fragile, sad. No one is going to think it is weird if she gets sick too. You just need to have patience." The room went completely silent while the recordings played. I could not look at David. I could not see his expression while he listened to his own voice planning our death. When they played the part where Victoria talked about how she had killed Hector and Sylvia, the reaction was audible, murmurs, choked exclamations of shock. "Victoria." It took me about 4 months with the man. I started very slowly, minimal doses. He started having dizziness, confusion. The doctor thought it was early Alzheimer's. My mom, Sylvia, lasted 6 months. It was harder because she was younger, healthier, but in the end it worked. David, and no one suspected Victoria. The doctors thought it was natural. He was 68, she was 62. It happens. You know, when the tests showed possible poisoning, they had already been cremated. There was no way to prove anything. The trial lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of horrifying accounts, crushing evidence. Witnesses confirming every sordid detail of David and Victoria's plan. On the penultimate day, the prosecution closed, presenting a complete timeline. They showed how Victoria met David at a corporate event, how she intentionally seduced him, how she gradually planted the seed of the idea that his parents were obstacles to his happiness. The emails and messages showed a clear pattern. At first, Victoria was subtle, comments, apparently innocent, about how David deserved more from life, about how it was unfair that he had to wait for the inheritance while his parents lived comfortably. Gradually, the suggestions became more direct. "What if there was a way to have everything now?" she wrote in a message. "What if you did not need to wait decades?" David initially resisted. "What are you talking about, killing my parents? Are you crazy?" But Victoria was persistent. She shared articles about poisoning cases that were never discovered, talked about how she had become free and rich when Hector and Sylvia died, painted a seductive picture of a life of luxury and freedom, and slowly, David gave in. The first message where he agreed with the plan was dated 6 months ago. "Okay, let us do this. But it has to be perfect. There can be no mistakes." 6 months. He had been planning to kill us for 6 months. When it was the defense's turn to present final argument, David's lawyer focused entirely on Victoria's manipulation. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he spoke, "my client is guilty. Yes, but he is also a victim of a calculating sociopath who seduced and manipulated him, who used his love for her to transform him into an instrument of death. He presented psychological psychological reports showing that David was in deep depression, that he genuinely regretted it, that he had tried suicide twice in prison since the arrest. David Mendez is not a monster, argued the lawyer. He is a man who committed terrible mistakes under the influence of a true monster. He deserves punishment, yes, but he also deserves a chance at redemption. Victoria's defense, on the other hand, tried to argue that everything was nothing more than a fantasy, that the conversations were just a morbid game of the couple, that they never had real intention to kill anyone. Where is the proof that my client killed Hector and Sylvia Fernandez? Argued the lawyer. There is none, just speculation based on conversations taken out of context. But the accusation against Victoria in the Fernandez case was strong. Witnesses talked about how she had behaved strangely during their illness, how she was anxious to cremate the bodies before more detailed tests could be done, how she started spending the inheritance before even the funeral. On the last day came the time for the prosecution's final arguments. Prosecutor Edward Martinez was visibly emotional. What we saw in these 2 weeks, he began, was the darkest face of human nature. A woman who killed the parents who raised her for greed. A man who planned to murder the parents who loved him unconditionally for the promise of wealth and an easy life. He pointed to the evidence, meticulously organized on a table. This is not fantasy. This is not a game. These are real plans, real actions, real poison that caused real damage to Mr. Robert Mendez. Then he turned to David and Victoria. You are young. You had a whole life ahead, but you chose the easiest path, the path of betrayal, of murder, and now you must pay for the consequences of those choices. The jury retired to deliberate. Robert and I waited in a private room. The hours passed with torturous slowness. Every minute seemed like an hour. Finally, after 4 hours, we were called back. The jury had a verdict. My heart was in my throat when the jury foreman stood up to read. In the case of the state against David Mendez for the charge of attempted qualified homicide, we find the defendant guilty. I felt Robert squeeze my hand. In the case of the state against Victoria Fernandez for the charge of attempted qualified homicide, we find the defendant guilty. There was a collective sigh in the courtroom. In the case of the state against Victoria Fernandez for the charge of homicide of Hector Fernandez, we find the defendant guilty. In the case of the state against Victoria Fernandez for the charge of homicide of Sylvia Fernandez, we find the defendant guilty. Victoria remained impassive, as if the verdict did not affect her. David, on the other hand, collapsed. I saw his shoulders shaking with silent sob. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following week. When we left the court, we were surrounded by reporters. Microphones were put in our faces. Questions shouted from all sides. Security escorted us to the car. At home, that night, Robert and I finally managed to breathe for the first time in weeks. It is over, said Robert. Finally, it is over. But I knew it was not quite like that. The trial had ended. Yes, but the healing process of learning to live with that scar, that was going to take much longer. At the sentencing hearing, the judge was direct. David Mendez, he began, you betrayed in the most fundamental way possible the two people who loved you most in this world for the crimes of which you were found guilty. I sentence you to 25 years in prison. David heard the sentence with his head down, without reaction. Victoria Fernandez, continued the judge, you not only planned and executed the murder of your own parental figures, but also seduced and manipulated a young man to do the same, for the crimes of which you were found guilty. I sentence you to the maximum penalty, equivalent to life imprisonment, without possibility of parole. This time, Victoria reacted. For the first time since the beginning of the trial, I saw a crack in her mask of serenity. Her eyes opened wide. Her face paled. This is unfair, she screamed, standing up. I did not do anything. It was all him. Everything was David. The guards restrained her while she continued screaming, finally showing her true face. She was no longer the serene and composed girlfriend. She was an angry, desperate woman, showing her teeth. It was satisfying, in a certain way, seeing her lose control. When the judge struck the gavel for the last time, officially closing the case, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It was finished, really finished. 6 months have passed since the sentencing. Life slowly began to return to some semblance of normalcy. Although I knew it would never be the same normalcy as before, Robert and I decided to sell the house. There were too many memories there, most of them now stained by betrayal. We bought a smaller apartment in another neighborhood and started over. Therapy continued, weekly, sometimes twice a week, when the bad days were too much to bear, Doctor. Sarah helped us process, to understand that it was not our fault that we did the best we could as parents. You gave love, she repeated. You gave education, structure, opportunities. The choices David made were his, not yours. Intellectually, I understood. Emotionally, I still struggled with guilt. Where did I go wrong? What signs did I miss? Those questions still woke me up at 3 a.m. 2 months after the sentencing. We received another letter from David, this time. Robert agreed to read it with me. The letter was long, detailed. David talked about the therapy he was doing in prison, about how he was finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done, about the regret that consumed him daily. I do not expect forgiveness, he wrote. I do not deserve it. But I want you to know that every day I wake up with the awareness of what I almost did, of how close I was to destroying the 2 most important people in my life. He talked about Victoria, about how she had manipulated him, but he also took responsibility. She planted the seed, but I watered it. I nourished it. I chose to believe the lies because it was easier than working hard for my own life. At the end of the letter, he made a request. One day, when and if you feel ready, I would like to see you, not to ask for forgiveness, just to look you in the eyes and tell you personally how sorry I am. Robert and I discussed the letter at length. Do you want to see him? I asked. Robert stayed silent for a long time. I do not know. Part of me wants to. Part of me still sees that little boy I taught to ride a bike, but another part sees the man who tried to kill us. I completed. Exactly. We decided we were not ready. Maybe one day we would be, maybe never. And that was okay. Life went on. I found some comfort in volunteer work, helping other families who went through similar traumas. Robert went back to painting, a hobby he had abandoned years ago. We made new friends, people who did not know our story, who saw us only as Barbara and Robert, not as that couple whose son tried to kill them. Jason, the computer technician, became a close friend. He felt he had a responsibility for us, although I always told him he was our savior, not the other way around. If you had not shown me that, I told him at a lunch. Robert would be dead now. I probably would be too. You saved our lives. He got embarrassed with the praise. But it was true. His courage in telling us, risking getting into something that was not his business, gave us the chance to survive. 1 year after the sentencing, on our wedding anniversary, Robert and I held a small vow renewal ceremony, just the 2 of us, a judge and Jason as witness, in joy and in sorrow. We said to each other, we survived the deepest sorrow. Now let us focus on the joy. It was not a happy ending in the traditional sense. The scars remain. There are days when the pain is as sharp as it was at the beginning. There are nights when I dream of David as a child and wake up crying. But there are also good days, days when I manage to think of him and separate the son I loved from the man who tried to kill me. Days when I feel gratitude for being alive, for having Robert by my side, for having survived. 2 weeks ago, I made a decision. I wrote a letter to David. Not offering forgiveness, I was not ready for that yet, but acknowledging that I received his letters, that I understood his regret. Maybe one day we can talk, I wrote, but not now. It still hurts too much. I still see your face when I close my eyes and remember everything. One day, maybe, but not today. I sent the letter and felt lighter, somehow, as if I had let go of a little of the weight I carried. The story of the computer technician who saved my life went viral on social media. Jason received messages from the whole world praising his courage. He never got used to the attention, but I think he felt proud of having done the right thing. Recently, Dr. Sarah asked me, Barbara, if you could go back in time, what would you change? I thought about it for a long time before answering. Nothing, I said finally. If I changed anything, maybe Robert would be dead now. Maybe I would be. What happened was horrible, but it brought us here, alive, and that is what matters. I learned things about myself that I never knew. I learned that I am stronger than I thought. I learned that I can survive the unthinkable. I learned that love, true love like the one Robert and I share, can withstand even the worst storm. David will have his chance at redemption. If he chooses it, he is still young. When he gets out of prison, he will still have time to rebuild, to try to do something good with the rest of his life. Victoria will probably die in prison. Part of me feels pity for her. What a terrible life she must have led to become who she became, but the greater part feels justice. As for us, Robert and I are living, not just surviving, but really living. We travel, we laugh, we make plans for the future. The scars are there. They will always be, but they do not define us anymore. And when I look back to that day at Jason's shop when he turned the laptop towards me and changed my life forever, I feel gratitude. Gratitude that he had courage. Gratitude for having survived. Gratitude for every day I have now. Life is precious, fragile. It can be snatched away so easily by illness, accident, or by someone you trust completely. But it is also resilient. It can be rebuilt. It can find meaning even after the worst destruction. And that is what I am doing, rebuilding, one day at a time. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and do not forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not upload here. I will wait for you there.